Hi, everyone. Welcome to the McKay Fall Conference. Very happy to be here. Welcome to our session. This is JumpStart Math, defibrillating GED math for at-risk learners, and we are from the Legacy Center for Community Success in Midland, Michigan. A little background about us. My name is Jennifer Majorana, and I'm the Director of Adult Literacy at the Legacy Center. I have a bachelor's in linguistics, a master's in TESOL, and about 7 years of teaching ESL.
And I am Mark Miller, and I have a bachelor's in education from Central Michigan University, go Chips, and a master's from Saginaw Valley, and just about 30 years of secondary education teaching experience.
So we've been a dynamic duo, and we're really excited to talk to you about one of our most recent programs we've implemented with our partners at Midland's Open Door. So a little more about Legacy Center. As I mentioned, we're located in Midland, Michigan. And we are a private nonprofit. We receive WIOA, but no Section 107 funds. And our model is a one-on-one tutoring model. So we serve adult learners, and we have all trained volunteers besides Mark and myself, who are the paid staff members in our program. And a big part of our job is training our volunteers to give excellent instruction to our adult learners. And they meet with their tutors about 2 hours a week. And another point about the Legacy Center that's a little bit unique is that students do not have to be MERS eligible to enroll. So sometimes we get students who are too low or too high, and we still serve those students as well. So I alluded to our literacy program model already, but we do utilize volunteer tutors. And these are community members who have passed a background check, and they receive about 12 hours of tutor training from either Mark or myself. And our model is one-on-one, 2 hours per week. Each participant is paired with their own tutor, so they develop that relationship over time. And one of the benefits of that model is that scheduling is very flexible. Whatever works for the learner and the tutor works for us. The areas that we offer math, literacy. We do offer a dyslexia program for both youth and adults, and then also English as a second language. And our curriculum, we tailor to fit each participant's abilities, needs, and goals. And really, our programs are designed for participants with a pre-ninth grade skill level, and usually they're about pre-third grade in math specifically. So that's a little bit about our model. And obviously we work with a lot of other agencies and nonprofits around Midland and in the Tri-Cities area. And this is kind of the way that referrals work. And I mentioned Midland's Open Door, and that's one of the partners that we're going to be focusing on in this presentation. And so the way the process works, the referral process, is that a partner like Midland's Open Door will refer a learner to us because they have some educational needs. And we have a personal meeting with their guests for a skills assessment and an introduction and kind of let them know what we can offer. Then we make a plan of action to meet their goals. And the Legacy Center finds an appropriate tutor for that guest, whether it's math or reading. And then we facilitate that introduction to the tutor. So that's sort of the standard model that we have been following, and it works really well for us. In most circumstances. And really the biggest need we've seen, especially from the Open Door, and I should mention the Open Door is a homeless shelter and a soup kitchen. So they serve very high need learners who have a lot of other aspects of their life that they're working on, not just education. So the need for them, what we've heard from Open Door is primarily in math. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Math is the hardest GED test for many of our learners, probably many of yours as well. And not to mention, it's the hardest subject in school for many people. I mean, would you agree with that?
It's difficult. A lot of students struggle with math and need a little extra help here and there. And it's not as easy as maybe some other things, as social studies, maybe more interesting, but it definitely can be a struggle for learners.
Yeah. And it can also be the hardest subject for them to study on their own. Maybe something like social studies, they have a little bit more background on, or it wasn't quite as hard for them in school, so they can do a little bit more self-study. And really, as we all know, math is so necessary for success in everyday life, no matter if they're shopping at the grocery store or doing their taxes. They really need to have a good grasp on at least basic math principles, fractions, percentages, units of measurement, and just basic arithmetic. And so what we've seen is that GED preparation programs, in order for these learners to be eligible for them, really to be most successful, they need to have at least 4th to middle school math knowledge. And if they can't do their times tables and they don't understand the concepts of fractions and things like that, then some of these programs are going to be really difficult for them. So the background to how this program came about, our partnership with Open Door, is that in spring of 2019, Open Door referred 2 of their guests to us. And so I worked with them, I paired them with tutors, but after a few sessions, they dropped off the radar. They had a lot of other things going on in their lives and they weren't able to continue. And so we kind of took a step back as the Legacy Center and we said, you know, we really must do better. It's too important. These are such at-risk, high-risk learners that this is the population that we really want to be serving, and we need to rethink how we're going to do that. So we started to adapt the model for our Open Door partnership. And so a little bit to contrast the traditional model to work with Open Door clients, some of those shortcomings, the time frame was too extended. Legacy Center, our goal was 40 hours, as it is for many of you because of WIOA regulations. It would take about 1 year to complete only 2 hours a week. And that's a very long time for a person who is in that situation of homelessness. So the time, it takes too long and they don't see progress very quickly. So it takes too long to see progress, only 2 hours a week. You know, depending on what you're working on, it can really be grueling to just move at that slower pace. Thirdly, I think what I observed is some of those learners, once they got through the CASAS test and they started working with their tutor, they realized that this was not going to be an easy process. They realized it was going to be really effortful. It was going to take a lot of sweat equity, and it was going to take a lot of effort on their part, sustained effort to reach their goal. And that could be demotivating for them. Next, learning in isolation can be difficult. So even though a one-on-one model allows for the individualization and the tailoring of the curriculum for each student, which is definitely one of our strengths, it would also kind of isolate the student sometimes from their friends, other people who could encourage them in their learning process. And then finally, what we found was that these learners did not really have self-study skills. So it wasn't really enough to have 2 hours a week and then expect them or ask them to study a little bit on their own during the rest of the week. So they really were only getting that 2 hours of instruction per week. They were able to do a lot on their own at that point. So because of those shortcomings, we decided to kind of redesign and adapt our model for Midland's Open Door to serve their clients better. So here's how we address some of those shortcomings. So with the time frame was too extended, 40 hours taking 1 year to complete, we decided to compress 40 hours of instruction into a 5-week format, which was a marathon to say the least. It was really intense, and Mark's going to talk more about what the experience of the program was like. So we got that time frame compressed. And then next, that struggle with taking so long to see progress and feeling discouraged, we decided that maybe more intense study in a short period of time would allow learners to see that progress more quickly, and hopefully that's motivating for them. And then that realization that our learners often have when they start to work, they think, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize what I didn't know, right? But hopefully in a cohort, in a class model, that realization can be made while the class is still ongoing and they're starting to see that learning become visible to themselves. To combat isolation, we kind of went towards a cohort model to create that community of learners that we're working together. We can help each other, we can support each other and cheer one another on. And then finally with self-study, we decided not to assume that self-study skills would be in place, but within a more intensive course, we built in that self-study time. So we adapted our model, we adapted our program for the specific population, and Open Door was an amazing partner. And Mark is going to tell you more about what that model actually looked like.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. So as Jennifer mentioned, we began our 5-week program with 4 learners initially, and it became 5. And as we started this, we thought about every single aspect of our program. And Jennifer and I were together almost every minute of these 5 weeks. I was, my job as the instructor, but Jennifer provided extra instruction on the side, group work. She was there all the time for assistance, guidance, support, etc. So we were really a team, and I give Jennifer a lot of thanks for the success of this program because she's a wonderful teammate. So thank you. But our program started like this. We had 4 learners day 1. We added 1 day 2, and we got to 5 real quick. But one of my biggest concerns was, as a teacher, what is the clay that's going to be sitting in that classroom? I really had no idea what the learners were going to look like, what they were going to have as previous knowledge. And Jennifer and I talked about in advance, what our plan was, but the best plan sometimes can be thrown away based on what actually the cards that you're dealt. So what clay is sitting in those seats. So the first day we got to know them a little bit. We made an important part of our process was getting to know our learners. The first day was building relationships, and that was the whole 5 weeks, but building relationships, always having conversations during breaks and our every time we got a chance to have sidebar conversations with people and get to know them in a more intimate way. That was very important for us as we started this program. So I had an idea as what we wanted to do mathematically, but all that could have changed on the fly depending on what happened. And I think that's very important as you begin. I know we talked about giving them binders. We gave each learner a binder the first day, and our curriculum was probably going to be about 1.5 inches thick in theory. And we talked about maybe if they saw that binder 1.5 inches thick day one, they might just turn and walk right out. So what we did was we threw about 30 pages, maybe 15 pages of paper in there for day one, and we just kept adding every day. But it was more like that 1.5 inches of paper. But again, everything was thought out. We had a plan for everything, probably an over plan for everything. So as we began, we wanted to make those relationships with our learners and build that trust that we're all on the same page together. And we ended up with 5 learners through the heart, the meat and potatoes of the program. And then at the end, we lost 1. We had some of the best teamwork out there. The open door, outstanding, in selecting our learners, in supporting our learners. We had a lady, multiple ladies who were there for us during the 3-hour sessions for food, for our breaks. They transported, and we worked with a church in Midland to give us space in the basement. And it was actually a really good learning space. And it was nice and cool downstairs throughout the summer. So, every part of this was planned in preparation. We had a great space, a great team, great support. And it seemed like we, had a very good opportunity to be successful. And it just took, some running this plan through to fruition. So a little bit more about the plan. It was a 5-week plan. I had an idea of what we wanted to cover. As Jennifer mentioned, whole number operations, kind of the base of middle school mathematics. And we focused on money. So I found a textbook that we could base it off of that, it did whole number operations with money as the continual focus. Off of that, we did all kinds of applications, a couple labs. Inside of all those things, we did little fluency development like sprints, arithmetic sprints. One of our more entertaining one was we called it our learners versus the nerd. And Jennifer here participated as the nerd. She's very scholarly, but she was racing them in, let's say, a division race. And that was kind of fun for our learners to compete with someone who's competing for a PhD. And they had some success in that competition, which is fun. Again, we're always trying to build camaraderie in our learning. But our focus again was whole number operations. We talked about the number line, and we did work some with negative numbers, applications of percents, ratios, proportions. Everything was application. We would teach the meat and potatoes, I call it, how it works. But everything that we did was based on applying it in the real world. And I think I do that. I've always done that in my teaching career. I try to make math relevant. I never want to hear where we're going to use this. So I think that was very important. As we completed the whole number operation, we had some time left at the end, and we thought, well, what would we do with this time left? And we brainstormed and we had some ideas. And Jennifer said statistics is something that they can use in the GED. I teach stats at the high school, so that was a natural for us. And we went through measures of central tendency, and we also got into some basic probability. We touched on permutations and combinations. We got into some elementary algebra, solving for unknowns, and we messed around with perimeter and area and did some labs on that. One of the fun labs we did with our group was we broke them into 2 groups. I took half, Jennifer took half, and we ran a lab on building your dream home. And then we cost the thing out based on square footage. And we did a lot of math inside the project. So it was a very hands-on, very good learning experience for our learners. At the end, maybe jumping ahead a little bit here, but at the end of our 5 weeks together, we had learners, some in this picture right here, present on topics like combinations. One of our female learners talked about the number of combinations that could come off of a menu. And one of our other learners, male learners, talked about weather patterns and measures of central tendency used there. So, not only do we cover these topics, but at the end, they presented to a small group of guests from our agency and the open door. That's a little about our curriculum. And again, that can all be fluid. We came up with a plan, but I really had no idea until we saw the clay in the seats and we started interacting and knew exactly where they were at. We would have altered that any which way on the fly as we went. But that's what you see on the screen is essentially what we did. And I can remember coming in the first couple of days, I don't know if I told Jennifer this, but I would come in and I would listen to pump up speeches because I was trying to get motivated myself. I wanted to be energetic for these learners. And there's a strength and conditioning coach at Georgia Tech University that gives some really good 2-3 minute TikToks on motivation. And I would listen to him on the way in about being a difference maker. And it seemed like as I walked in that church, I always felt a little bit better after listening to him for about 2-3 minutes, because I wanted our time to be important and valuable and make a difference during our time together for our learners. So I think everything was well thought out, and great team. That's key. Pick your team first.
Social emotional learning was something else that we worked on.
Our social emotional learning. We took into consideration the whole learner. We would talk about maybe jobs with our learners. We would talk about relationships with our learners. Some of our learners had children. Some of them, had grandchildren. And jobs, and maybe some of their jobs, they had things they would talk to us. Once they had a relationship with us, they would ask us, well, how do I talk to my boss about getting more hours?
Right.
Or how do I go about getting a job? One of these learners obtained a job afterwards. And we're always trying to build relationships. After our 3 hours, this is really crazy, because after our 3 hours together, these 5 learners with Jennifer and I, they would actually stay around afterwards and talk more.
We couldn't leave. I mean, if you had somewhere to be right afterwards, you better cancel it, because you would get another hour of conversation afterwards, because they just love that relationship.
They do. And it was really neat. So a lot of times they were the ones doing the talking. We were listening.
Mostly listening.
And trying to advise where we could. So that mentoring part of it. But education is just not academics, and there's so much more to it. And with this group especially, I think that guidance and that relationship building was just so key. And we did it early, we did it often, as much as we could. The graduation ceremony I alluded to, we had a real nice ceremony at the end. We had some guests there, probably had 25 to 30 people in attendance at the end, guests from both agencies, some family was there.
Cool.
Really neat. 50% of our learners made measurable gains. I think all of them made gains, but the 50% made measurable gains.
Yeah, from the CASAS.
From the CASAS. Yeah. So here are some pictures of our basement of the church. And you can see what's going on here a little bit, but essentially we put up a screen, had a projector. I was working off of a laptop with a document camera, and we had lots of we had copies. Each learner had a packet, calculators are flying around. We would probably work for about 40 to 50 minutes and take a break. We gave them a couple of breaks. Maybe you can see some food in some of these pictures.
Lots of food.
Lots of food. For our learners, and quite honestly, Jennifer and I. Yep. We got there about 8:30. We left about 12:30, so it was a full day for us as well. And here's some more pictures of us with our learners. One of our learners there, you can see dead center, injured his hand.
Yeah.
I think one of my mentoring moments was I took him in the bathroom. We cleaned his hand up, and we put some ointment on there. And Jennifer went and got some gauze and some Band-Aids. And we ended up being teachers / medical professionals at a very high level, but making sure his hand was clean, because he did injure that pretty good. You can see us down the bottom left during one of our breaks playing basketball. Again, always trying to build relationships with our learners. It was so important. We had the best learners, but we just kept building that relationship. And Jennifer here, I didn't realize she was so good at basketball. She came out there and started shooting with us at lunch, and it was good. They really enjoyed that.
They enjoyed seeing us make fools of ourselves playing basketball, actually, is what they enjoyed.
They did. Yeah, they enjoyed seeing us as human beings.
Definitely.
as normal people, and probably making fools of ourselves. And this is an important part. We talked about all the food, and we would do special things. And Monday, Jennifer had this idea that let's do milkshakes. So Jennifer.
Yeah, so we just thought it would be a really good incentive to help the learners come back after a long weekend. Maybe Monday morning rolls around, you're not really feeling so into math that day. But maybe if you realize, oh, I'm going to get a milkshake if I show up to class today, then that might motivate you to come to class. And so we kind of instituted this thing called Milkshake Mondays, where around, halfway point through the class, we would take people's orders and I would run out to McDonald's and grab milkshakes or coffee or a burger or whatever really they wanted. And they really loved that, honestly. And I think they could tell that we really cared about them as people, that they weren't just numbers in a seat to us, but we wanted to make sure they were equipped with everything they needed to be successful. And especially with their situation and where they're coming from in life. A lot of them either previously homeless or currently homeless, and really needing that food security to reduce that barrier to learning. So that was just one example of a creative way we tried to increase motivation and really help them feel like the class was meaningful for them, not just with what they were learning, but also as human beings that were developing that relationship. And one thing I want to highlight too, as we were working with Open Door, is that as we got to know our students, we were more and more comfortable with serving as references for them on job applications. And that was something that Open Door told us was so valuable, because these individuals don't have a lot of people in their life that know them well enough or would be willing to serve as a reference. So that was a huge benefit of that relationship building that we did, was that we had specific stories, specific examples to offer if they were to use this as a reference. And we could also see that development and that growth over time in them. So Milkshake Mondays.
Milkshake Mondays. And just a sidebar, with our attendance, it wasn't always perfect. And we did have some makeup days. We had our plan, but we also had, it was 3 days a week. And towards the last 2 weeks of our 5, we did have some makeup days. One of our learners worked, so he missed a couple for work. We went around the 4th of July, there were some holidays. So there were some absences in there. We did have some makeup days, but to piggyback on what Jennifer just said, the using us as a reference for jobs. I said to one of them flat out, you finish this class, I'll walk you in with an employee. I will walk you in wherever you want to go, and I will vouch for you as being someone who will show up and will finish. And that learner completed the 5 weeks. I'm not saying that was that conversation, but we would always say, if you do this, we will do these things for you. We will always stand behind you. You finish this program with us, and we're always going to be there for you. Not that we wouldn't anyways, but it was motivation for them to finish up the 40 hours and finish up our program together. So we once we got to know them, we were willing to vouch for them as learners, as workers, and as human beings.
Yeah, so just some food for thought. I know we're recording this, obviously, and we wish that we were there in person, virtually, and we could.
Food is a theme.
I guess it is. That must be important to us.
It is.
But just some questions we wanted to throw out there for you to ponder. Just like with this program, we realized that our current educational model maybe wasn't working for the at-risk population that we wanted to serve. So some things to think about: what are the strengths and the weaknesses of your current educational model? Whatever that may be. If you have hybrid instruction, if you have in-person classes where students have to be at certain times, if you have completely online, I'm sure you're aware of the weaknesses, but also the strengths, right? What's working well for specific groups of your students? And then furthermore, what at-risk populations are you currently serving or would you like to serve? So for us, we weren't necessarily, looking for more students, more referrals from the Midland's Open Door. We weren't feeling like, oh man, we're not serving enough of these individuals. But at the same time, as I had 2 individuals who were not retained in our program, that was a moment for us to pause and to really think about, what are we doing right now and what could we improve that we could actually serve these individuals better. So the at-risk population, whatever risk factors they may have. And then finally, how could you adapt your model to meet the unique needs of these populations? So learners, clients from Midland's Open Door, they have unique needs. They don't have reliable transportation, even more so than a lot of our adult basic education learners. They have crisis needs in their life, whether it's employment or housing, and they've had really rough life circumstances a lot of the times. And so trying to adapt that model, and one of the biggest points of success with this program was that strong partnership with Midland's Open Door. They had the relationship with these students. They knew them personally. They even went into the students' apartment buildings and banged on their doors to wake them up, get them in the van, and bring them to class. So without them, it really would have been impossible. So I think partners is a really big lesson that we learned, is how important it is to pick a good partner and to have really clear expectations at the beginning about what we're going to provide and what that partner is going to provide.
Yes, once again, we had the best team.
They were amazing.
And we had the best teammates. They picked the learners, they mentored the learners as well. You know, we did more mentoring as we got to know them.
Mhm.
But as Jennifer said, one of the learners said to me the first day, whose idea was to have math on a Monday?
We're like,
yeah, we're like us. But yeah, as they got to know us, we were probably treated a lot like the Open Door staff. But the Open Door staff was always the best partner for us all the way through.
yeah. Anything else you want to add? We missed?
I think that's about it. I thank you for listening today. If you ever have any questions about any part of this program and how we put it together, feel free to contact Jennifer or I at the Legacy Center for Community Success. We're in Midland, Michigan, and we thank you for your attention today.
Have a great conference.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.